The Arizona Wildcats preview and prediction video here. All right, Chris, I'll start us off. The Arizona Wildcats offense. All right, a lot has been made about Jedd Fisch leaving for Washington, but Brennan, man, that is a mouthful to say really fast. I dare anybody out there to say that 5 times in a row fast, right? He left San Jose State for the Wildcats. He's going to have his work cut out for him, right? Let me give you some stats for him, right? He's 34-48 as a head coach and is 0-3 in bowl games. Of course, we do know that was at San Jose State, right? So a lot can be made there. The good news is he does get back 70% of the Wildcats starters from last year. San Jose State did have a top 50 offense last year, and he inherits a top 20 offense that Jedd Fisch had from last year, right? Look, this offense is going to start in with quarterback Noah Fifita. He had 2,800 yards last year, 25 touchdowns, right, as a freshman. Now, he wasn't a true freshman, but he was a freshman, so he still has a lot of room to grow. He still has a lot of eligibility remaining. The run game is going to go through San Jose State transfer Conley, who had over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns last year as well. Look, Fifita is going to lean on their wide receiver, Tatora McMillan, right? He had 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns last year, right? That Fifita to McMillan, that combination, that should still be every bit as good as they were last year, I'd like to think. They also have Montana Lamonius Craig, if that name sounds familiar. Remember the Colorado transfer that Dion actually wanted to stay? He transferred in last year, but they also had a new transfer too from Old Dominion in Raymelo Murphy, both of whom combined for about 800 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. So their wide receiver core, pretty good, right? The Wildcats also get back just about all of their starting offensive linemen from last year. So I really like that on the offensive side of the ball. Chris, I'm going to kick it over to you and get your take on the defense.
Yeah, no, I'm going to throw a couple stats out here on last year's defense. Believe it or not, and this kind of surprised me when I looked this up, but they only gave up 21.1 points per game last year. That was 30th in the country. I actually thought it was going to be much worse than that, but they did have a solid defense last year, and they had a really surprising year last year overall. Arizona did. You touched on the new coach. It'll be interesting to see how this works in the new Big 12. But one thing about the defense last year too, I want to mention, they had 31 sacks as well. They get back both leading tacklers this year, Jacob Manu and then safety Dalton Johnson. That'll be huge for that defense. They did well in the transfer portal as well. They picked up a few pieces. I believe they finished top 50 in the transfer portal. That's pretty damn good for Arizona. And it'll be interesting to see what Nick Rallis, the new defensive coach there, does this year with Arizona. He's actually, believe it or not, Christian, your Philadelphia Eagles linebacker coach the past couple of years, came over with Brennan. So it's going to be a little interesting to see what Arizona is this year. Just like I said, a lot of changes on both sides of the ball, especially coaching, but I expect him to do well. So, Christian, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to pull up that schedule, and I'll run through this relatively quickly here for you first. And we're probably going to be a little different on Arizona this year, and that's all right. But I got New Mexico. Obviously, we know Arizona should be able to win that game. We got Northern Arizona. Not worried about that. Then at K-State, I have that one penciled as a loss. We both talked about K-State. We think they're going to be a pretty good team this year. And then you go on the road back-to-back there, and then you got to play Utah. We just touched on Utah. That's 2 losses. So I see a 2-2 start here for Arizona, Christian. Then you got Tech. I don't really know what Tech is going to be this year. I think that's a coin flip game personally. You turn around, you go to BYU. I'm not worried about BYU this year. Then you got Colorado. I'm not too worried about Colorado either. I know we're a little different on that probably as well. Then West Virginia, your team. That's at home for Arizona. I'm going to probably lean Arizona in that game, but then you turn around again, go back on the road to Central Florida. Central Florida is one of those teams that I would assume would be better this year, and I think that'll be a tough one for Arizona to go down there to Florida and play that one. So I have that one penciled as a loss as well. Houston doesn't scare me this year. TCU, what is TCU this year? Are they the team that played in the championship game a couple years ago, or were they a team last year that won 5 games? I think they're probably somewhere in between. And then you got Arizona State, who I think is probably going to be one of the worst teams in the Big 12 this year. That program's in shambles. But overall, Christian, you can pick the losses here, but I have Arizona going 8-4. And I know that might surprise you a little bit. But the 4 losses I'm going to call out here is probably the K-State game, Utah. I'm going to say Central Florida, and I'm probably going to go with TCU.
There for a minute, you had me worried. I was going to have to start calling you Chris Pate. I thought they were going to go 9-3. I too have them going 8-4, Chris. So why don't we make it why don't we circle today as a glorious day? We'll make it a national holiday. We agree on something. Look, I've got losses to Kansas State, Utah. I do think West Virginia. To me, and we'll talk West Virginia at some point throughout the season. I don't think we're going to do a whole breakdown on them, but I'll give my whole piece on them without going too far into a tangent here. West Virginia, to me, they're either going to do something special this year or they're going to be a massive disappointment. I don't think there's any in between. They get their quarterback back. They get their coach back in Neil Brown. I'm going to just say, hey, I think they're going to be a tough out this year, even on the road. I think they lose this game. I think Arizona loses this game to West Virginia, and I think there's possibly a surprise loss somewhere else in this schedule for them, right? Look, I think the offense gets back a lot, which I like, but the defense does lose. I thought they lost some pieces, right? And they are joining a new conference, so that can always be a little bit tough. I understand they were in the Pac-12 last year, which was a tougher conference, arguably. You could make the argument than the Big 12 has been. So, we'll see. Like I said, we're going to see Arizona gets back enough pieces, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are.